following process has been going on in local government for 40 years. You have a problem, a local problem, a pothole, a drain to be cleaned, or overgrown public areas. You take it to your councillor. Your councillor takes it to the council, agrees to a solution. Council makes a request to the CEO to examine your solution. The CEO sends it to the corporation staff. Both the staff and the CEO do not report to the council. The solution to your problem is then examined. Engineer reports, surveys, estimate of costs. This takes 3 to 6 months or longer. When your solution is quantified, it is returned for the council's approval. The solution is then sent back to the CEO, where it begins its journey to the permanent secretary in Port of Spain for processing and takes months to be acknowledged. The permanent secretary then sends it to the ministry's projects unit for review and may even query aspects of your solution. If they approve, it is sent to the finance and accounts unit to determine if there is enough available funds to pay for your solution. If funds are available, it is sent back to the projects unit with a confirmation and returned to the PS. It now goes to the Ministry of Finance to again be checked and await approval for a release of funds. When approved there, it then goes back to the PS in the ministry and every single desk it previously touched on its way back to your councillor. This is the journey of just one solution in the current system of local government.
Now, as we head towards the local government elections next Monday on August 14th, we're going to be discussing local government reform, which, according to the government, is all about getting better management and letting burgesses have greater management in their own affairs. And so joining us this morning to talk more about it, we have Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for communications, Simon de Nobrega, and Member of Parliament for Tunapuna and Deputy Speaker, Mr. Esmond Ford. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Pleasure to be
especially
here.
just a few days away from local government elections on Monday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I know that you're still preparing. Now,
Yes.
what we saw was that lengthy process that is actually happening now in terms of how you can get something done, whether it be for your borough, your corporation, that sort of thing. And given your backgrounds, of course, former vice chairman, of course, chairman, tell us some of the challenges, add on to what we've seen there, some of the challenges to get something done as simple as fixing a road in the borough corporation. I'm going to start with you first, Minister.
Thanks, Kimberly. Of course, you would have introduced us as members of Parliament, but more importantly, we are both products of the local government system. And even though vice chairman and chairman, we were both councillors and elected councillors, and that's important. I was saying to everyone as we were watching the short clip that looking at it took me back to the frustration of being a councillor. You are correct. There is reform is going to change a lot of how representatives, elected representatives, are able to actually represent those people that they are tasked with that responsibility for. Right. And while, yes, there are still going to be capital projects, so capital projects being paving of roads, being larger local government issues. The truth is that a lot of the frustration that is felt by the average citizen is not in those big capital projects, but it's in these small niggling issues. It's these small issues that while you know that these things are happening, but your curb is broken, your drain is broken, there's a pothole in front of your house.
Garbage collection.
It's garbage collection every single day. And you have touched it there. Garbage collection is a major issue because very often you have garbage or the abundance of it, very often defining communities. So you, as a child going to school, it's the last thing you see after you leave your house or the first thing you see when you come home. And all of these things are going to be directly impacted by local government reform, and we could get into it, but also I know everyone is going to have.
Well, again, morning to Trinidad and Tobago and my constituents in Tunapuna. Local government is basically local. It's about the service within your community. The road you drive when you're leaving home to go to work. whether there's a pothole, whether the garbage is being collected. So the important thing is really for the community, right? And local government is really about ensuring that the work gets done and the work gets done timely. We have been hearing about reform many years now, since in the days of Minister Hazel Manning, back then, and then we went on to different ministers. But under Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, it's going to happen. Local government reform will take place to ensure that all the bureaucracy will be cleared up.
Well, and then let's get into the process. So we've
Sure.
seen the video in terms of from this desk to that desk, it goes to the PS, it comes back, approval, that sort of thing. And as you can see, the timeline getting larger and the issue is still there. And so with local government reform, how is the process going to be shorter? Is it that the chairman of the borough will now be in charge of getting the funds to pave the road? I mean, how is that going to work?
Right. Well, there's going to be an executive council, right? Outside of the whole council of the regional corporation or the municipality, you're going to set up a council with responsibility with different portfolios for whatever aspect, infrastructure, drainage, recreation, sanitation, as the case may be. And they now will be liaising directly now with the CEO, minimizing that whole red tape of going to ensure that it has to be budgetary allocations and all those directives. So we'll be minimizing that issue and taking it directly to the situation, which will work out to be, I say, within a month, 3 weeks, as against a couple months that usually takes place now.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen is that while the pothole needs to be repaired, and with the heavy rainfall these days, by the time the funding is allocated, the pothole size has changed.
Correct.
And residents are now getting annoyed. They're saying, okay, the councillor is not performing. But the idea about it is that the request has been made for the services, but because of the bureaucracy, it happens at a later stage.
At a later stage.
At a later stage.
Minister.
Esmond is correct. We both know the challenge of not being able to react as quickly as is required. In cutting through this red tape, what allows is for the corporation to have an allocation that is given to them. And the perfect working model for that is the THA, right? So there's a direct relationship between the corporation and the Ministry of Finance, right? Yeah. That money comes to the corporation, and the corporation has the autonomy, has the authority to spend it the way it needs to be spent, yeah? And so something happens, there is no longer, and when I say something happens, there is I suppose a pothole is the easiest. It's the identifier, right?
Issue.
And so there is no longer a requirement, one, in order to get that done, to wait for releases because your finance department has to write and they're going to do that at the end of the month, or they get the releases and the persons who are tasked with the responsibility of executing, both in terms of purchasing and in terms of doing, because your councillor is not the person who is doing the work. The councillor advocates on behalf of the electorate and correct representation, right? So what happens is the person who is tasked with the purchasing, and I can tell you from personal experience, you need to build a wall or a curb somewhere. And when releases are sent and purchases are made, you realize that you've purchased cement, you've purchased gravel, but you haven't purchased blocks and you haven't purchased sand. What local government reform does is it gives authority to that executive council in order to be held accountable by the electorate, but also to hold accountable those who are tasked with execution.
But Minister, allow me to interject here, because we're talking about that similarity between local government and also with THA, right? Yeah. So when you think about that, there's an autonomy that executive council will have. And I have to ask the question, who has oversight over that council? Because some people have raised the fact that this council may have too much authority, especially as it relates to public funds.
Well, there's a difference between responsibility for what you are tasked with and overstepping what your responsibility is. And I think that what we are looking at here is ensuring that there is autonomy and there is the ability to execute the responsibility when it comes to local government that you have been tasked with. Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of overarching responsibility, of course, there's still going to be a level of oversight by the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
There's still going to be a level of oversight by the Minister.
Added to that, Minister, is that you have to remember that executive council still have to report to the actual council of the municipality.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So there will be that accountability to ensure, and then remember you're dealing directly with the Ministry of Finance. So whether it is that the PS or there'll be an accounting officer to ensure that those things are taken care of on a daily basis.
But I also think, Emily, that to extend on what Esmond is saying, that there is also a requirement in this for statutory meetings, which is where the public attends, to be held, and to be held in such a way that the public is able to add oversight and to hold their elected representatives to account, whether it is that something has not gotten done, to be told why it has not gotten done. If it's not being done fast enough, to be told that as well. And then there is also, in terms of oversight, the embedded oversight that comes with the chairmanship of those committees. So I think it would have been Minister Arawi in a public forum would have discussed very much like what happens at the parliament level, where you have certain key committees that must be chaired in councils where you have a majority and a minority, must be chaired by the minority.
Yeah.
So embedded in reform is that oversight, is that ability to hold accountable from within and from outside.
So let's take a broader look at it as well, because we're thinking about the pothole, the garbage collection. But how else are the Burgesses going to benefit from local government reform? Are we going to see more jobs? Are we going to see things like that? How else are they going to benefit?
Okay. Now, keep in mind, with local government reform, the four important pillars are basically the manpower, which will take care of the human resources, the machinery, which is the equipment, right? The money, which is most important, and the materials. Those four things put together will ensure that reform will be profitable, will be beneficial for the community. Keeping in mind that each one interrelate and each one work hand in hand with each other. So therefore, for reform, it's on paper. The money is there, the materials is there, the equipment is there. The human resource aspect is where we need to get that mindset change. Because if the workers continue in the same mold, in the same frame of mind, in Tunapuna Piak Regional Corporation, you come to work for 7, it is said you come to work for 7 and by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you're gone. You know what I mean? We need to ensure that those hours are put in place to ensure garbage collection is in Tunapuna Piaku is on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. Outside of those days, the system will fall.
Yeah.
Right? The system will fall. So you need to ensure that accountability is taken care of. Workers need to be on duty. The money needs to be there, the funding on a timely basis. The materials purchased also on a timely basis, but the manpower must execute.
And
without those things...
Where's the money coming from?
Well, here's the thing. And even before we get to that, coming back to jobs, right? So you have two things here. One, you have a council and a corporation that for the first time actually has the authority to hire. Yeah? And garbage collection is a perfect example of that. Yeah? So you have the ability to go, when you combine local government reform with the Public Procurement Act, those two combined, you have the ability to go and hire and enter into contracts as the corporation for the very first time. And a major part of that, one of the weights in terms of hiring and award, is local content. So what you're going to see, two things. You're going to see a reformed local government that, one, benefits small and medium community-based contractors. That's the first part. Local economic development is one of those committees that forms a major pillar of local government. But separate to that, in terms of what does that mean to the man and woman on the street, and in particular young people, who is also looking for a job, whether that job be permanent, whether that job be contractual, or whether that job be short-term. When you have a corporation that has this level of autonomy, and moving on to what I suspect is your next point, where the money is coming from,
funding, yes,
that is funded both from central government and from taxes raised within the corporation, collected by the corporation and spent in the corporation. You have the ability for a council who can be reactive and proactive to say, we have this issue, and this issue can be whatever is specific to that region, and that touches on the need for a region to not only know what their problems are, but know what the solutions are as well.
Yeah.
To have councillors who understand that, and those solutions are very often local in nature. But to have the ability to say, all right, we have these parks, and these parks, we have a real issue here of maintenance of the parks, right? Specific to this. And that issue may be beyond what our maintenance teams may be capable of doing. And as a result of that, we want to have a team of 5 people assigned to these 3 parks, and their job is to ensure that this area is maintained exclusively for that. We may have any issue in a community where the solution, whether that be a short-term solution or a long-term solution, exists in the community, and the ability to solve it requires bringing persons from that community together to say, we have this solution and we want to execute it. That never truly existed in a practical sense at local government level.
Minister, permit me to ask as well. So we are seeing the benefits that local government reform is supposed to have for the community, for the burgesses, that sort of thing. How soon can we actually see it in practice?
Well, first of all, it has to form part of what we would like to think is a final referendum and a final approval by the population to say we are for reform. And once that is done, right now the Attorney General, the Cabinet, are all working towards ensuring that the legislation is in place to be able to effect these changes as we go along. So you're going to see over the course of the coming months and years a rollout. And when I say years, I want to make sure the population doesn't see this as another pie in the sky. However, there is a requirement very often to make certain changes to amendments to different pieces of legislation. But property tax is going to be a component of that. Reform is going to benefit from the changes in the Public Procurement Act, which gives that power to the corporation. So you are going to see immediate implementation of major components, and as this goes on, we are going to see the other supporting services being rolled out at local government. But the most important thing is that right now you are going to have corporations who have that level of autonomy, who have that level of authority that matches their responsibility to be able to effectively represent.
Yeah.
If I may add, and one of the things that again can be readily rolled out with regards to the community contractual arrangements, each council, like for instance in the Tunapuna-Piako region, similar to most of the other regions, we have 16 electoral districts. Each one of those districts now will have a particular councillor. Contractors that are based in those areas will be given first preference. So let's say, for instance, in Orzenville, Tunapuna, there are contractors there. So the development programs that are estimated and programmed by these councils now will be given to contractors in the area, and they will be obligated to hire individuals from within the electoral districts.
Yeah.
Those are things can, again, immediately after the elections, those programs can start.
Right.
Contractors roll out, community contractors, community workers, and each one working to the benefit of their particular community.
Yeah.
Those
Minister,
are things that are important.
We have about 1 more minute left. Just for the public to understand exactly what local government reform is, remind us of the process. I have a pothole in my area, I come to the councillor. What's next?
You have a pothole in your area, you have an issue in your area of any sort that is to be dealt with by a reformed local government, which has expanded from what it is now.
Yeah.
You come to the councillor, you say we have this issue. The councillor goes to council, says we have this issue, it needs to be addressed, we need to have a solution for it. A decision is made at council, this is the solution, council now has the ability to make that decision, implement that decision, and then monitor and execute on that decision and hold the people who are responsible for the execution accountable. That is literally that arc of delivery, as opposed to coming to council, council goes to Kent House has to issue releases, those releases have to arrive, it has to go into the specific vote that is for that, and then you now have to very often hope that the funding is approved and that it is being implemented, because you now have a body that is accountable to the council, as opposed to, and it is an unfortunate truth, as opposed to having a person who works in the corporation simply say, you cannot hold me accountable because I don't report to you as the council or the councillor.
All right. Well, Minister de Nobrega, MP Ford, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah,
I know it's going to be the last few days of election, and so we look forward to see the race as we look forward to August 14th. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure being here, man.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Always. Thank you.
And that, of course, was the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister Communication, Simon de Nobrega, and the Honourable Member of Parliament for Tunapuna and also Deputy Speaker of the House, Mr. Esmond Ford. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.